Mike, congratulations.
I'm so excited to report that Saturday school was relatively, I'll say relatively successful. I think that the goal was to get about 100 students in on the first day, but that was a little ambitious. Slow start, but for the 12 students that showed up last week, the week one, it was super, super productive. I know did you copy a couple of the? Yes. Oh, okay. And so we added a reflection for students to tell us, why are you here? And some students were like, I was forced here. I got a letter that I had to come. But by the time that they were done, they set goals for themselves. What is it that you'd like to do? And then at the end, we had them do like a post reflection. And so now tell us everything that you did. And kids talked about feeling more comfortable, feeling proud of themselves, and they got work done. Some kids, even at the high school, some high school students actually said, I'm done with the things that they asked me to do. Can I come back? And so that really tells us that kids need a space, that some might come reluctantly, but some come willingly, and that we are providing a space for them to get some work done in a quiet space, in a supported space. We had teachers from different disciplines there, ready to help students as needed, and so I was happy that it was very productive. Week two, we had 12 students week one. Week two, we just had 11 students, which I thought was great given the fact that it was snowing and they showed up. So like super extra bonus points for those kids that came in the snow. But we knew that there were going to be a lot more kids coming, and then the weather didn't permit that. The best news is that we were able to secure funding for transportation. That was a concern before. And so we're going to work out the details to start on January 25th. There is no Saturday school this coming Saturday because of the holiday weekend, and then we will resume again on January 25th, and we'll have transportation set up by then. We'll work out the details. Families will be notified of, it's going to work like summer school where there's specific stops in town, not the normal after-school stop, but like specific stops or like the late bus, something like that. And we'll notify families of those stops. So we're excited. We have we have more. We're going to run this through hopefully May 31st, and so what happens. Vacation camps are, like described vacation camps before, they're called Acceleration Academies, both for February and April. And that's a separate grant from DESE, the Acceleration Academy grant. And it's something a little bit different where we have to show that we are using data to target students. We have to identify what standards should be covered, and we have to create learning experiences for them. So we're a Saturday school, kids are finishing work that they owe. In April and February, they're going to be doing sort of like a project-based learning activity. So learning the standards, but through some project where there'll be an end product for the week. So we're working with the teachers to describe all of the expectations from DESE and to create exciting, dynamic learning experiences where kids are going to want to come to do some special project. We are 99% full at Webster Middle as far as staff. We haven't done the student piece yet because I can't invite students until I can be assured that we have people to work. And so we've done a big push for a big plug for vacation camps, and we have sufficient people for Saturday school for Webster Middle School minus one person. And there are certification issues, so we have a lot of people from Park Avenue applying, and they can work if they're certified up to grade, but most of their licenses are certified up to grade 6. And so we can have them be like a second person, but in a dyad, there has to be one person who is certified in that content area. So we're short one person there. This is supposed to be for Webster Middle School and for Bartlett High School. We're having a lot of difficulty getting staff from Bartlett. So unfortunately, maybe by the end of next week, we don't have any applicants for Bartlett. We will only be able to do it at middle school. And we have to shut it down at some point because we have to plan. Like we have to invite students, we have to plan the lessons, we have to plan food, we have to plan transportation. So can't wait until the very end to accept, applications. Um, and that's unfortunate, and there's always April, and we can hope to learn from February's example and do better in April. But I'm still hoping, so if there's anybody listening, please apply. Our students need us. And so we're excited that we have these opportunities for our students and families, and we hope that both staff and students avail themselves of this opportunity.
So we're actually right now in the process of conducting the iReady assessments. So students have been testing not only on iReady Math, but also iReady Reading as well, ELA component. There's also dibbles that are happening, from the beginning of the year, all, and during the course of the year as well, and also study sync benchmarks that are also being conducted. I think a little bit in this year, it's a little bit different for some of the schools where they're not necessarily all testing at the same time. And also, I think moving forward for next year, we're going to be looking at the study sync benchmarks and also iReady ELA as well, and see how we can actually create a schedule that doesn't conflict with some of the testing and assessments that are taking place at the same time. And I don't know if anybody has any questions.
as we navigate holiday season, cold weather through bugs, stuff like that. So, but that doesn't stop the work and the outreach that we are doing. So really nice to be able to have that. And that this report is just one little thing. Jump into any category on there, dive in, get students, get percentages, get dates, get all kinds of information. So it's been critical for us to go through as we navigate, try to support students. And then the last thing under my other report is that we are entering in. It is 5 of our bargaining here. I do have a training set up for our WEA union and our instructional assistant union for interest-based bargaining, which I'm very pleased that they requested again to do this training and this type of bargaining. It's a very collaborative way to work through issues and to work together as a team to come up with a new contract and bargain. So that training will be held here in the school committee room on January 22nd from 4 to 8. And that concludes my report. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Perangeli. Any questions from the committee?
I'm just wondering, not really a question. I assume members of the committee can go to the IB.
My suggestion right now would be to have the members who are participating in those bargaining units to attend the trainings. I will leave that up to the chair if you want to expand that to have training on interest-based bargaining. We can talk about that further.
Yeah, we'll take a look at who's on the, how many people we have attending already, and what about, maybe Lois might have some preferences as well. So we can take a look at that for sure, if there's interest. Any other questions or comments from the committee for Mrs. Perangeli? Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is the business manager report. Good evening, Mrs. Contos.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, we're going to start with the Bartlett renovation project and updates on the activities that are going on. Very happy to report that our switchgear equipment arrived. This equipment is used to support the power, enabling the power in the new section of the building. We had early predictions that that wasn't going to get here until end of February, so having it arrive earlier than anticipated is a significant milestone on this project. That was a key dependency for us being able to get the IT closet up and running and get that equipment installed, among other things, but this was a significant dependency, so we all celebrated that one. Another key milestone is that all framing within that section has been complete, so 100% of all of the framing is completed. Windows were being installed. As of the time that I did this update, we were 75% complete with the installation of all the windows in that section. And we began testing of the windows. So the testing of the windows was going to happen in 2 phases. One was starting with the existing openings that we were putting windows back into versus places in the building where we were adding windows that didn't previously exist. So they did begin the testing. We are waiting for the results of that testing, and we'll report back on that once we have that. The other thing that we're anticipating is starting early in February, all of the equipment for the kitchen will be installed. So that's another significant milestone as we approach the April transition date. I'm going to give you some highlights of all of the activities that are either already underway and or planned for the month of January. So in the basement, the key things that are happening or planned are priming all of the hallways, tiling the bathrooms and locker rooms, installing lights, placing the epoxy on the floor, and getting the plumbing fixtures as well as the ceiling grid in place. On the first floor, the focus is on installing all of the fire protection, sheetrocking, painting the cafeteria, completing all the in-wall roughs, in the classrooms and painting the gymnasium. On the second floor, they're focusing on installing lights, ceiling grids in the hallways, and installing tile in the bathrooms, and then all of the flooring in the classrooms. In the auditorium, they did complete framing the walls because we are at that 100% mark, and they're completing all of the in-wall electrical roughing and plumbing, installing all the ductwork, fire protection in the catwalk, and then from a site work standpoint, they're installing all the light pole bases. So lots of activity going on. It's getting real and very exciting. So we're really happy about the progress so far. One of the things that I wanted to make the committee aware of is that we did, actually, let me back up. At the very start of the construction phase, we did begin receiving reports about odors, and we did address those early on. However, in the month of December, we received 5 reports about odors. So when we get those reports, they're submitted to us through a form. We immediately investigate them. Of those 5, we were immediately able to identify the root cause, with the exception of 1, which we discovered when the 5th report came in. So at a high level, what we discovered, 1 was coming from a lull that was warming up and idling outside before the start of the day, before moving away from the building. So we addressed that by, addressing where they're going to be idling and when they're going to be starting that. Another was traced back to a Bobcat, as well as a mini excavator that was in the section at that time. So they immediately switched from diesel-powered to electric-powered to address that situation. Then the last one, which got a little trickier, was we thought we originally identified what the problem was, and it was a heater that was blowing heat into the section right near the vestibule by the original main office. So we shut that down for a couple days. That resolved it, moved it over by the auditorium, turned it back on, and the smell came back. So out of the process of elimination, we determined that it was a faulty heater and replaced that heater. So as a result of all those activities, we progressed through our architect as well as the project team to do some air quality testing. So I believe it was on January 3rd and 4th, we did air quality testing. So one was on a standard workday, the other was on a weekend. And actually, I got the report after we did the school committee packet, so I can send out the report to you because we did get it over the weekend. The good news is there were no findings with that air quality report. However, there were some recommendations. Those recommendations, there's 2 key ones really for the building project itself, and it is adding additional ventilation in that vestibule area. So there's like an area where once it seeps in, it gets trapped there and it has nowhere to go. So it starts seeping into the section B and causing some challenges. And the other one was just around the frequency of changing out air filters. So one of the areas where the project team has installed charcoal filters is on all of the univents in the classroom. On the exterior, they put charcoal filters. So what they're going to do is increase the frequency in which they change those filters. So the team takes this very seriously and wants to address all of these reports. We will do another 2 days. We just need to identify what's the right time to test again to make sure that we're identifying and really staying on top of this. Any questions about that? You certainly got more detail in your packet on that, giving you the breakdown, but we are taking that very seriously for students and staff. The last tidbit that I included in your packet that I thought you would find interesting is on a construction project. No project is without change orders, and that's pretty standard in the construction business. We have a process where any potential change order gets thoroughly vetted through our architect as well as our OPM. Once they vet that, it goes to a working group of the school building committee that meets every other week to review them to determine if we are going to approve them and recommend them to the school building committee to include in an official change order. So it's a pretty rigorous process that we go through. And I thought I'd highlight some data points from that process. So to date, there have been a total of 10 change orders, totaling a little over $1.2 million, of which 2 of the, actually not the change orders, it's a potential change orders, actually resulted in a credit back to us. So these change orders, when the potential change orders come through, Some of them are actually credits back to us as well, and we had two significant ones in the amount of $41,393. So in terms of the number of potential change orders that we've had, we've received 156 to date. Of those, 37 of those are voided. So what that essentially means is through negotiation and conversation and going back and forth and challenging, they've been eliminated. 132 of those were incorporated into the 10 change orders, and right now we have 25 that are in queue that are being reviewed. Of these 156 and the ones that have been incorporated, they do cross phases. The majority so far have been for Phase 1, but we've already approved some for Phase 2 and for Phase 3. I'm just waiting for a breakdown on what those look like. Our contingency is still healthy. So when you see these numbers, you might say, where's the money coming from? The contingency is still healthy. I will get an update on that for the next meeting. We are making some adjustments to the budget as a result of our project funding agreement changes. We just had to respond to our bid savings and take action on that. So I'll get you those updates in the next report. Before I move on to my next, I want to see if there's any.
Yeah, just one more thing. I think it's important to note that when you look at our project, you think A, B, and C section, it's even parts, but it's not. The majority of work is being done in the first phase.
Yep.
So the majority is 50%, at least 50% of the work is being done. So when you look at change orders, you should be, having the majority of them, and you would think that they would get less as we work through. It's important to make that note when you're thinking of, oh my gosh, we've got 1 million, 1.2, are we going to have 1.2 in every phase? They should be getting less and not as bad as the first phase, which lines up with the construction that's being done.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we learned is if there's something that might apply building-wide, that's why I say there's been some for future phases. If we recognize that if it's an issue in this section as an unforeseen condition, it's likely going to apply to the next two sections.
And just as a point of clarification, these are not fundamental changes to the project. These are unforeseen things that are coming up that, because the project was already planned, we need to formalize the process for making changes.
There's different categories. A few of them in this breakdown are change requests from the owner as well. They tend to be smaller types of things, like can we put a power outlet here? Can we make this change to, I'm trying to think, the gym entrance. The gym entrance is a good example. We wanted to add another door when you enter the gym entrance from the locker side, right? So that people didn't have full access to get down into the locker room. So if we had someone that got into that section, could we control it with a lock or something like that? So there's been some, I think that's the top one that comes to mind.
Or like a classroom. We were recently walking through classrooms, and there's one with like an alcove out, and it's just like, it was a big space of, we said, that's wasted space. Couldn't it be a closet? Couldn't we have shelving? Couldn't we put something there? So we requested to go back and say, can we do something additional with that space? So that's a change order from our request.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions or comments from the committee regarding the building project?
Okay, and other maintenance news across the district. Bartlett's still holding on, but we continue to face some challenges. So the water heater was a little temperamental for a couple days last week and not starting up the way we would have expected it in the morning, and then automatically, like I like to say, starting to work on its own. We did call for service and discovered that there was an air switch that was faulty. We were able to immediately jump it, get it working, and we're just waiting for the replacement part in that heater. I will say that the kitchen staff was very thankful that it did start up before lunch started because they were starting to warm water, so they were particularly thrilled that it worked. At Webster Middle School, want to report that during the break, an odor was detected, and we learned that we had a gas leak in the building. We were very lucky that this happened over break. The fire department and National Grid were called and were on site immediately, able to identify the location of that leak, and it was patched and resolved. I think we had it resolved within 3 hours. It was a very swift response. So kudos to the person who identified that. It was, actually, I'll get to an update here, but we had a contractor on site who lifted up a tile in a bathroom and discovered the odor. So had they not lifted that tile up and smelt that, we may not have discovered it the way we did. So very thankful for that. We've also been having some challenges at Webster Middle School with the building alarm going off. There's been some sensitivity in the communications, so we've had to call for service on that. They were able to tweak that communication in their software and address that, so we weren't getting unnecessary calls that there were issues going on in the building. That typically goes to our head custodian, and he gets the majority of those calls. It escalates to a few others if he doesn't respond. The other project that I'm really excited to report on, I actually thought I was going to be telling you about this project in this meeting, but as luck would have it, the contractor ended up being available much earlier and wanted to get a start on it. So my apologies for telling you about something that's almost completed before it even started. So we were able to kick off, so I think about 3 or 4 years ago, we did phase 1 of installing LED lights in Webster Middle School, and we've been waiting to complete that entire project. And we were able to kick that off last month, and because they had availability, they got started, and we believe at this point, we're probably about 95% complete with upgrading all of the lights within that building to LED. What I'm really happy to report about, and this is unique and why we jumped on the offer, because this doesn't often happen, is that National Grid gave us an incentive that we couldn't refuse. So 85% of this project is being funded through National Grid incentives, rebates, and our solar credits. So that remaining 15% will be paid for through what we call on-bill repayment on a monthly basis for 60 months. So it, normally they don't give the types of incentives that they gave, and in this particular case, they were, I think the last time we talked to them last year, they were giving between 15 and 20% off in incentives, and they came back because they had not been having people take advantage of the incentives, and they had some excess incentive money to offer, so they were giving a 50% off, which is significant. So really happy about that. From what I'm hearing, the lights are very bright. Very, very bright, and in many cases, instead of having all 3 panels on, people are only keeping on 1 panel. So the end result of that is we actually end up saving a bit in electricity, not the intended outcome because people would keep them off. It is because they do provide additional savings, but I think that's the additional benefit that we're getting from that. Anything else you want to add on that? Okay. The other good news that I'll tell you that the custodians like is because it's now LED lights and not like this, if you look up at this, students aren't getting things stuck on the lights that they have to go up and clean. That's now been eradicated. So that's a benefit to the custodians. Last but not least, at Park Ave, we had the elevator get stuck last week, and it started early in the morning with a staff member who was sitting in the closet behind me recording this meeting, got stuck in the elevator in the morning, and we immediately had it serviced before the start of school, and then discovered roughly 45 minutes after school started that it apparently was not fully repaired, and a second staff member got stuck in the elevator, so we had to call the company back, and they did finally get that resolved. So variety of maintenance things that continue to happen across the district, so just another month in the life of managing buildings and facilities. Any question on that front? Okay, I have one last update under other updates, and what I wanted to share with you is on January 7th, we received a notification from Power School of a cybersecurity incident. So what we learned is that on December 28th, Power School suffered a cybersecurity breach which comprise personal data of students and teachers across K through 12 in school districts across the United States. The compromised credentials on Power Schools, it's their customer service portal. Power Source is what it's called, allowed unauthorized access to the company's, what they call their student information system or school information system, SIS. So this exposed data is what we know at this point is the exposed data falls in the category of personally identifiable information, PII. That is what we know at this point. additional points that were shared on webinars and things that we've been able to gather through consultation with experts in the field who've been staying abreast of this, is that they have committed that we should be receiving data files from them sometime next week. Some question about whether or not they can really do the data mining and the data forensics that they need to do in a short period of time, that they will really be able to get those files to us, but we're remaining hopeful that we'll have more information next week. Now, there's two different types of implementations of PowerSchool. There's one implementation that is in the cloud, which is what we call software as a service, in which the company hosts the application, all the servers in the entire database, and that there's other districts who actually host it on their prem. So there's two different installation types. We are a cloud-based installation. Everything's hosted in the cloud. So what we do know is that schools who use the cloud-based are the schools that will be receiving the data files from PowerSchool. Those schools that host it on-prem will be doing that own, they'll be given instructions by PowerSchool on how to get the files that they need, right? So there's two different approaches that are being taken. But PowerSchool is committed that they're going to handle and assist with all of the individual notification to everybody, as well as all the regulatory notifications, and providing credit monitoring where it's applicable. So we're kind of in a holding pattern at this point with only knowing bits of information. What we have done is we have sent out a notification, I believe it was last Thursday, to our staff as well as all of our families. We then received further information from PowerSchool, and we have posted it on our website, which has an overview of the incident. It has FAQs that people can look at, and we have sent that communication out as well, so everyone's aware of that website and where they can go to get information. We've also sought counsel on this as well, so that we make sure that we handle our protocols appropriately as we get information from PowerSchool. Let me just pause there and see if there's any questions. All right, I think that's it for my update.
Thank you for your updates, Mrs. Contos. Just one thing about the PowerSchool situation. PowerSchool is a pretty big organization. They serve districts across the country, right? So this is not unique to Webster in any sense.
This is a significant breach for them because they service, did they say about 200 in Massachusetts?
Just in this state.
Just in this state alone, but it's affected every state.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for all that you've done. As a parent, I received the communication and appreciate the transparency that you all are providing, and hope PowerSchool will.
What I can share with you just from my previous career is that there is a very specific process that they do need to follow. There's regulatory requirements about notification, but what I anticipate that they're doing right now is they're in their data forensics mode. You know, first they were in their containment mode, right? Figure out what happened, contain the situation, get that under control, then get into forensics to truly understand, you know, what specifically was breached. And to what extent, so that then they can take the appropriate actions from there.
Great.
Through the chair, sorry, I
Member
just have
Blythe?
one question. When they're delivering the data, those data files, how are they going to send it? Are they sending it encrypted? Do you have a?
It should be coming through a secured method, I would expect. It really, I think what will depend is what is contained in those files, right? And if it includes any of that information, it should be through a secure method. Which would then have it encrypted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Great. Right. Any other questions or comments from the committee? All right. The next item on the agenda is our principal report, and joining us this evening for updates is Ms. Peterson from Webster Middle School. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start by updating you on some of our events that are happening and have happened at Webster Middle. As Ms. Rivera talked about our iReady already, and so we are doing our English iReady currently, and we'll start our math iReady next week. And so we talked at ILT today about how that information is disseminated to both students and families. And then we are going to be continuing to use the data from that testing as we move into our next round of our RTI enrichment groups. We have also started access testing for our L students, and so all L students, even those who have opted out, it is, yes. Okay. All those have opted out as well have to take access, and so our L teachers are getting that done, and we should have that done by hopefully the end of the month. Last Wednesday, we were lucky to have a motivational speaker come to us. It was brought to us by one of our staff members who actually knows this person, and so he was kind enough to do this for free, which is always beneficial. Anthony Valentine is a motivational speaker who focuses on working with teens and adolescents. And so we had our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders participate in the event. And unfortunately, I was here in this room in a meeting, so I wasn't able to get to see what happened, but all the things I hear were fabulous, and both the students and the staff haven't stopped raving about him. I talked to a couple of our 6th graders today during lunch to tell me, what did you learn or what can you share with me? And they immediately lit up and they were like, oh, we loved him. We loved his stories. And I said, well, what were they about? And they were right on target with it was about don't give up. It was so inspiring, just about life in general. And he shared life-changing stories that never to give up. There's always someone there to help you on the other side. And it's just a phase that you can get through anything, and there's always people to help you. So they were very involved in the. And the other great thing about this is usually when you have a speaker, it's an hour and they're out the door. But he stayed with us for the whole day, and he went to all of the lunches, and he visited many classrooms and had a couple one-on-one discussions with some students that we kind of targeted. And so it was a really great thing. Then hopefully we can have him back again in the future. On January 31st, happy to announce that we will be doing our annual semi-formal for our 7th and 8th graders. Hasn't been pushed out yet to students. We originally were going to have it this Friday, but next Friday, but that's too soon to get everything out. And I said to the advisor, parents need to know because, the girls have to get their dresses and their shoes. So we need to push it back. So Friday, January 31st. It's always a great event to see the kids in a different environment, dressed up and just being kids, dressed up, having fun. And then another date to keep on your radar is March 7th. We are going to be trying to host a career day for 8th graders. Hoping that we can expand it to 7th grade as well. However, to do it for 8th grade in the manner that I want to present, I need 16 adults who will want to come participate because I don't want it to be a career fair where kids go from table to table because they don't participate that way. So my vision is to have at least 16 professionals come in, and we have students choose 2 or 3, and they will rotate every half hour to have a presentation about what the job entails, what education you need, what kinds of things you have to do. So if you are interested, anybody out there is interested, please email me directly and I will get you more information, or if you know anybody who you can send our way. the eighth grade students, I did a survey back in September, October, and the list of things that they're interested in is just amazing and lengthy. I wasn't expecting that at all, so I don't know what I was expecting, quite frankly, but but so we are welcoming anybody who wants to participate in that. Any questions about any of those events? I wanted to share some data. I know that Ms. Perangeli talked about attendance, and so I want to update you with our attendance. Our year-to-date attendance continues to be better than last year. Last year, at this time, we were at 91%. Currently, our running attendance average is 93.6%. We are down this month a little bit, but it's still higher than it was last year. The whatever is going around is just awful, and it knocks people out for days, myself included. So in December, our average was 92.7 this year, and last year it was 90%. So again, higher. Our chronic absences last year at this time were 33.3%, and currently it's 20%. So that is a significant drop in students who have had chronic absenteeism. And then we have had 1,760 students tardy. Well, obviously not 1,000 students because we only have 570, but we've had 1,000 tardies. And so, but that sounds like a large number, but it's down 14% from last year at this time. And there are only 18 students who have 20 or more absences. And then, as Ms. Perangeli said, we can dive deeper into what those absences are. I mean, out of those 18, we probably have a half dozen to 8 who have some pretty significant medical issues. So we're looking pretty good in terms of our attendance, which I'm happy to say. We have some discipline data. So using our educator's handbook, last year at this time, we had 1,149 minor incidents, and this year we currently have 855. And so minors are things that the teachers handle on their own within their classroom. So things like a teacher detention, a parent phone call home, a warning, those kinds of things are considered minors. So our numbers are significantly lower there as well. And referrals are those incidents which get sent to admin to take care of. So higher kind of things like physical aggression, weapons, those kinds of things come to us. And so last year at this time, we had 919 referrals, and this year it's at 561. So we're seeing a pretty good drop in all of those things. And at faculty meeting this week, I had asked our staff to look at some different data. We started examining homework percentages and the percentage of students who stay after. I haven't culled that data together yet, but because the nurse doesn't have those kinds of things, she was actually looking at different data. And so she reported to me that this year, again, at this time of year compared to last year, her nurse visits are down 567 visits. So they're down 500 from what they were, almost 600 from what they were last year. So what we are thinking in looking at this data is that all three of these pieces of data really, when you triangulate them, they really say a lot about what's happening at Webster Middle School in terms of students wanting to be at school, wanting to be in the classrooms. You know, a lot of students go to the nurse to escape or withdraw, and so that's not happening. And so I think this is really good trending for us. There's certainly improvements to be made, as always, but I think it looks good, and I think, what our staff is doing in terms of attendance meetings, academic reviews, reaching out to families on all levels, teachers, counselors, admin, that we're really a middle school community working together with parents and families. Any questions on data?
Really appreciate you bringing it to us.
I have a question for the chair.
Member Scriglia?
Just thinking about the middle school, I don't know what you have, like, in terms of if you have like a mentorship program for either student to student or staff to student, any of these like continued high-risk students who have chronic absenteeism that maybe is not related to anything medical or emotional, even like like partnering opportunities for students that might encourage them to have a trusted adult or positive buddy, maybe to keep them still, happy at school or going to school, engaged.
We don't have anything official, so when we go through our student support teams process, we do things like that, but it would be something that we should explore and examine. It's a good idea.
It's such a vulnerable age, right?
Mhm.
And that social piece is hard to navigate at that, the middle school age. So I liked having a buddy. It was always that quiet kid who just needed a homeroom check-in or a lunch check-in, lunch date, and they really liked that. I really liked it too.
Yeah, we do have a check-in, check-out system with our PBIS. Again, it's for more high-risk students, but for those kids who are kind of flying under the radar, a mentor might be a better way to look at it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Also provides an opportunity for students to be in that mentor role or that kind of informal leader type role as well. You can see where it would benefit both.
And then we always encourage students to participate in extracurricular activities because as I've said before, and I continue to say, when you're part of the community and involved in things, you want to be there. So it's another thing that we push and explore, and always are welcoming new activities. So when students come to us and say, I want to start a Pokemon club, we do it. I want to start a volunteer club, we do it. So we do it. We definitely do it, all of those things. So thank you. And then last, I want to invite Miss Kate Birdie up to the mic. So bring a chair up, Miss Birdie. As all of you probably know, Miss Birdie is one of our STEM teachers at Webster Middle School. Miss Birdie has been very instrumental in getting our project Lead the Way going at WMS, and puts so much time and effort into what she does and getting kids excited about learning and being their own learners. And so I'm happy to report that Miss Birdie has been recognized as Project Lead the Way's Rookie of the Year. And while she's not a rookie teacher, they consider her Rookie of the Year because she's in the first phase of developing Project Lead the Way. So I'm going to pass the mic to her, even though she doesn't want to talk a little bit about the process and how this came about in the future.
Actually, the only way that I would come is to talk about other people. So, is there any way to I sent you some slides. Can I show slides? Yeah. I mean, I intended not to talk, so now that I'm talking. 6 minutes ago?
Oh, there they are, okay.
Yeah. I saw that cord, that's the only reason why.
Oh, wow.
All right, so I did agree to come here. The only reason I came to is really to give a shout out to some other people. So I want to thank you guys, like the room in general, because when I first got here with Dr. Malkus, we were trying to bring in Project Lead the Way. And at that time, it was really for, it's a very expensive program. Obviously, you know that. It was really only available to wealthier districts who were willing to pay full price for it. And so really what it offers kids is obviously access to really high quality, cool materials. You're shaking your head, you know. It's real. So I mean, all of it is like teaching them something they will use in the future. The coolest part, obviously, is the way that they have like masterfully designed collaboration and teaching that to kids our age. So, but I do need to give a shout out because you guys somehow brought it. So it was this administration, it was this school committee. We have awesome administration. They come to our classrooms all the time. I don't know if you can see in this picture, but every 30 days I have people come to my classroom. It's like a mini showcase. But the high school teachers come over with their kids, which is really important to like bridge the kids. And I gotta give a shout out to Mr. Anise. So he's supposed to let us into the building at 6:15. He opens the door for me at 5:45. I don't know if that's illegal, but he walks me to my room and drops me there, and I get an extra half an hour of planning time. So I never stop working. So, but literally, I don't know. There's something about the magic of this team that brought it this time, and I can't tell you how valuable it is, but I'll try. All right, so I have to say, I feel like if you know me, I feel like I've been doing project-based learning for a very long time successfully. I think that was like my passion since I was little. And my problem is, and the reason why I finally caved and said yes to Michelle and went back to my original desire is the next slide, which is that's Boston. Somewhere in there in the turquoise shirts, you can see our kids. So besides the curriculum, besides so it's access. This Project Lead the Way gives us access to so many things. So if you look at the left over there, and some of you were in the room to watch, this was so cool. We got to actually work with other schools across the country, across the state, and we were zooming in with professionals and solving real problems for them, like actually presenting prototypes and ideas, both pathways. If you look at the middle picture, this is where the kids get to go in the spring to show off their stuff. Our new crew up here, I know Heidi wanted me to mention this, but we chose our new crew of 8 kids. They're up in the corner. I see some familiar faces up there. Maybe we can put in the newsletter with all their names. It'll be easier because it's a small picture. So access really is it. There's no way a teacher could create that at this level. These kids get to interact with it. Looking down there, they're interacting with like actual people they might work with and work for someday. So colleges were there. All right, now this award. My kids were very unhappy that it's a bright light award and it doesn't light up. So I am going to say that, yes, I'm really good at what I do, but these kids are even more amazing. I feel like I got this award. There's hundreds of people that just signed up. I feel like I got this award for the state because I put in a lot of time. I mean, I sacrificed a whole summer, took 3 full-length classes, which is like unheard of in their land, and then immediately flipped my whole entire everything right after the summer. So I think it was time. I think every curriculum is a 45-day curriculum for Project Lead the Way. I have 25 days to do it. So if you walked around Boston and you looked at the output, the projects that were presented from our middle school kids in 25 days, that's pretty amazing. I'll take a little bit of credit for the time, but I mean, that's their projects are their brainchild. I mean, that we have awesome kids, you know, right? Okay, so the only reason I'm here accepting this is really on their behalf. I feel like now we can move the most important part of Massachusetts down a little bit because this guy, random guy we all know, all he was looking for was Webster when he was there. It was really cool. He was like, where's Webster? Where's those kids? Where's that project I heard about? So I'm really proud of them because they just put everything into it. They don't find their ideas explode. It's really cool to just guide them in that. So just really here to say thank you to you guys and thank you to the kids and keep supporting this program. It's way more than a curriculum and a program. So.
Member Scriglia?
Through the chair. Why do you what's the 25 days? You only have 25 days?
Okay,
versus
so
the 45?
yeah, so my class is STEM class. It's now Project Lead the Way classes, and we run on rotations with the rest of the unified arts, so like health.
Right, so
gym.
so is it a 6-day cycle?
It is. So it's 30 days, but every 6 days they get a gym class.
Okay.
So it's 30 minus 5, which is 25.
So do you have like days 1, 2, and 3?
No, I just don't, like every 6 days I drop them.
Oh, okay, so you have
Tomorrow,
the
8th grade
5
goes to
days
gym. Yep.
And then drop,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. Yep.
Well, as somebody who's come into the classroom over the last couple of years to witness firsthand the students engaging with these high-quality materials and the excitement on their faces when they make something work or when they surprise us with the sound that's going to go off because they programmed their mini, what's it called?
Microbit.
Microbit. It's amazing to watch the wonder and the excitement on the faces of the students. So thank you.
Can I add 2 more things? Okay, I brought my own awards. I have 2 awards to give out. So every time I go to Project Lead the Way things, I speak of Miss Perangeli. I think she's the only superintendent. I must have mentioned one day that she was in the room and we had just done our showcase, and they were like, "That's so nice that she came to your showcase." And I said, "No, she comes every 30 days." And she'll sometimes stay there all day long. And so I have an award. And in true middle school style, these awards are keychains. Even more middle school style, they're Nikes.
Oh,
And on
perfect.
the inside, they say innovate. And I just want to say thank you. And you have to put this on your bag because that's a thing. But I wanted to say thank you for helping us, because really, it starts with the leadership of our town, right? And so I wanted to thank you. You're in my classroom every 30 days, except for that one day.
I know.
You'll never forget. And then I have another one from my boss over here. So Miss Peterson, this is the consistency award, but you're getting the same shoe because I just learned how to use my 3D printer at home. Same shoe, but she comes, she will be like, meeting, whatever, and then she'll jump in for 20 minutes if she has to, or like 10 minutes, and give feedback to kids. So it's like she's using whatever she's got to give it to us, and she's in there every single time, multiple times usually. So these are my innovation awards for my leaders.
Thank
You have to go on your back. It's very important.
And I just
right.
want to give Kate a huge shout out and thank her for all her hard work, because it is a lot of hard work. As I was saying at the beginning of tonight, it's a huge investment to have somebody trained in this course. It's a lot of work to have somebody trained in this course. And Kate literally gave up her summer and was ready for the start of school for our kids to be in this programming. And it's so nice to have this and to build that pathway up to the high school where they can go into the high school programming, start to see the excitement, what they can do, what they create, starts thinking of their careers. And what makes it real fun is that she's invested in it, and they see that investment and that excitement in her. So it's contagious. You can't help but feel that excitement when you walk into the class. She's always telling them, this is part of learning. It's okay to make mistakes. We're here. Things don't have to work. That's what engineering is, failing and fixing. So, yeah. So thank you for your energy, your hard work, your willingness to do something different. And, again, I appreciate the support of Ms. Peterson. She didn't hesitate when we asked about bringing this over. She was like, absolutely, bring it on down. And we're only looking at expanding and hopefully growing our programs as we go through. So I just want to say thank you, and we appreciate it. Our kids certainly appreciate it. You can see the excitement, and that's what it's about. So thank you so much.
And there's very few.
Yeah. Engagement.
Great.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, and congratulations. Ms. Peterson, was there anything else on your updates, or was that the conclusion of your updates?
No, I am done unless there are any questions.
Any other questions for Ms. Peterson or Ms. Birdie from the committee? No? Okay, well, once again, thank you. The next item on the agenda is an update from our student representative. Good evening, Hope.
Good evening. I wanted to start off kind of just because I'm a student who's in the PLTW program, and I'm in the health science end of it at the high school. And I just wanted to say that like you can really see the difference in the like interest in those classes. I've also traveled to the middle school a few times to kind of showcase what we've learned. I've shown how to draw blood from fake arms. It's you can really see it like the interest in the student body in those aspects. And I also got the opportunity last year to travel with the engineering aspect, the health science, which was a little funky because we're not engineering in the engineering pathway, but we got to learn and we got to participate, and I think a few of us got to like found a new interest in a field that we might not have recognized before, and I think that it's been great being a part of that program. For my updates for tonight, I have that we also had Math iReady this past week when we returned from break. We had that in homeroom in the morning. We also had our DECA attend districts at Nichols College on the 9th. Out of that, we had 2 students who placed first in the entrepreneurship category. That was AJ Heenan and Adam Phillips, and they were also invited to states. And then we have a junior, Naomi Orlean, who placed 4th in the principles of marketing category. We had study sync benchmark started on the 9th as well, and we had the winter sports pictures on the 10th. We have a PBIS raffle drawing on we had our first one on the 10th. Students can use their Bartlett bucks, which are like behavioral rewards that we receive, and you can place it into a bucket, and we do a raffle at the end of every few weeks. We have you can use you can enter into the raffle. We also have a school store now that you can use Bartlett bucks to buy different items, and we also received student feedback regarding PBIS as well. Bartlett has started a masked announcer every Friday where students are able to guess the faculty that are speaking, and whoever sends in the first correct guess gets a reward. And I think it's been really fun. Even if you don't necessarily email, I think even in the classes, I've seen like everybody like really like enjoys just guessing who the faculty member that's speaking every Friday. For upcoming, we have grades closing this Friday as well as the first semester of the school year. And we've had finals and midterms for classes that are ending or just to kind of give like a baseline of where students are. We have the Science MCAS Boot Camp is back for this year, where students can meet with their science teacher to get an extra help for their upcoming science MCAS. We also have no school the 20th or the 21st for holiday. And then we have the National Honor Society and School Student Council selling Krispy Kreme donuts by the dozen for $14 up until January 31st. And then tomorrow we have JV and varsity boys basketball home game against Sutton. JV's at 5 and varsity's at 6:30. And that concludes my updates for tonight.
Those are some great updates.
Thank you.
Lots happening.
Yes.
And love to hear your perspective on the Project Lead the Way as well.
It's really beneficial. I think it's personally helped me kind of figure out what I wanted to do after high school and make a like certain decision, which has been really helpful.
That's great. That's what it's all about right there.
Yes.
Any questions or comments for Hope?
I have one quickly through the chair. It's about PBIS, and it might be for you, Ms. Nevis. The Bartlett Bucks, the raffle, think about doing an auction. Those are always really fun, and you can kind of like make it like a student, event. And it could be like gift cards, non-purchasing of like extra, being, teacher for the day or principal for the day. I don't know, that was cool. It's fun, the auctions, doing something like that for the Bartlett Bucks.
Yeah.
I hope you can help me plan it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Hope. Nice to see you as always. The next item on the agenda is an update on the monthly fundraising activities. And just as a reminder, it's the role of the school committee to review fundraising activities, but we don't approve them. They're approved at the building level. And I can see in here some cocoa bombs, the prom, the junior and senior prom. And let's see here, some carnations. Lots of good stuff happening. And then something at Park Avenue as well. The Mexicali fundraiser for field trips. And did I miss one here? And the butter breads. Can't forget those. Any questions or comments from the committee about the fundraising activities that are going on in the district? No? Okay. The next item on the agenda under new business is a presentation of the FY26 department budget.
Thank you. So as I stated earlier, we have the district leadership team has spent actually the last couple of months, maybe since October or November. October, I think we started with our budget process, working through, working individually at the schools and then coming together as a team and collaborating on what you see here tonight. So this is our preliminary budget departmental request that we will review with you. As we get started, this was just a high overview of our calendar, our budget planning calendar, and when we started, you can see on October 1st, we had initially sent out our budget templates and started the process that led us here tonight. As far as timelines go, you can see a closer view. We are here on January 14th. Presenting our preliminary budget. Over the next couple of months, we will take your feedback and continue to work through the budget. We are required to send a budget to the town hall by the end of February, February 28th. We're required to submit a budget. So our last meeting in February is the 25th. At that meeting, we will be looking for an approval of a budget to send the town from the school committee. And then we proceed to continue to work on our budget with our local officials, our town accountant, town administrator. We'll hold public hearings. We'll attend finance committees. We usually work with our local finance committee, which will lead us to hopefully a budget at our annual town meeting, May 12th. As we started with the budget process, we had some budget goals in mind when we worked through. We look to always our priorities, enhancing student achievement with programs and support that directly improve student performance. I don't think I need to read all of these, but this is our guiding light as far as going through our budget, what we're hoping our outcomes are. If you have any questions on those, just let me know. I know a big focus is really, like I said, student achievement is always our number one. And then keeping up to date with our curriculum and bringing in HQIM across the district. This is our district prioritization. This is our goals that we've been working on, where it's all educators will intentionally plan and implement lessons utilizing district-approved curriculum materials to provide data-informed, research-based, inclusive practices so that students, particularly English language learners and students with disabilities, will demonstrate proficiency in grade-level reading and writing standards. This has been our guiding work. Our DILT work that we have focused on all school year. Some highlights that we've had across the district over the past year is we are currently still underway with our building renovation project, and we are scheduled to complete phase 1. and that'll be in April. So we will be shifting across the district and moving into phase 1 and closing down section B. We continue to work across the district on our PBIS supports team, working on Tier 1 interventions, Tier 2. We also are part of the SEB Academy this year that we are working on, which is also supporting that work. Our academic coaches are busy at each schools, helping us with the implementation of our district prioritization and supporting our Tier 1 instruction. Again, we have expanded our innovative pathways to Webster Middle School, which you saw here tonight, how they're rolling out. It's been very successful. So we're thrilled about that. And we are continuing to focus also on the high school in the expansion, in the completion and expansion of those programs at the high school. We have put a real emphasis on capturing and using data to inform decisions and evaluate district initiatives. You can see some of the data that you've seen here tonight coming out of Open Architect, using systems like iReady and Dibbles. We are also looking at student work and doing our learning walks, and all of this is helping to inform the decisions we make across the district. I mentioned the classroom walkthroughs. We continue to focus on family and community engagement, engaging our parents in the students' education, and being good partners with our community. And then we continue to implement our HQIM this year. We rolled out Eureka Math, which is a K through 6 program at Park Ave and Webster Middle School. And then our high school went to Open SciEd for Science, which I am.
All right, so I'm going to kick off this next segment. And what we'll do in this segment is we're going to just give you some information that is really kind of critical and why I'm starting with enrollment data. A lot of data and factors that we'll talk about directly correlate to the formula that derives our funding that we receive from a combination of the state and local revenues. We'll also share some historical information to kind of ground us before we jump into the departmental budget. So when we start with our enrollment, this is at a high level across the district. You can see that we are up this year. It's kind of been a very slow and steady increase that we've been seeing over the last 4 years, kind of rebounding from the drop that we saw in 2020 and around COVID. So been doing that slow increase. We'll dive in on the next slide into the details across the 3 schools. So on the left-hand side, you have historicals across multiple years, and I'm realizing I can't go back and forth with my readers and see the slide. And so what you can see is our overall district enrollment is at the top, broken down by each school. Green is Bartlett, yellow is Webster Middle School, blue is Park Ave. We saw an increase at Bartlett. We saw a slight decrease at Webster Middle School and an increase at Park Ave. Now, keep in mind, the data points that you see here and the enrollment that we have for the district, so the 1708 as of October 1, I think that's the key point. October 1 is the cutoff date that is used by the state to help derive our funding. What we included on here, which is important to note, is after October, we saw enrollment continue to rise. And overall, across the district, we had 42 new students matriculate into Webster Public Schools. Those 42 students and those counts aren't factored into the funding formula. So just to point that out. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Amy. Amy's going to just give you an overview of the enrollments at Park Ave.
Just taking our current grades and rolling them up, anticipating for a similar enrollment in kindergarten. This table just shows our staffing at each grade level, which our overall number of staff has remained the same. But one thing that is changing, we have a large enrollment moving from second grade to third grade. So 153 students in second grade, moving up to third grade. 2 years ago, we did reduce a third grade, moved that teacher up to fourth grade to account for a bubble moving through. It is now time to move that teacher back down to third grade to account for the large number in second grade. So next year, we anticipate small class sizes at second grade. But anecdotally, I would say second grade was where we got our most enrollment this year. A few years ago, it was fourth grade. It's just one of those things you can never really predict where we'll get those kids enrolling. So you'll see fourth grade is going to move to a bit of a larger class size, but still 23 for a fourth grade classroom is not unreasonable. In third grade, with the addition of the extra teacher, class sizes still stay about the same, just because of the large class size.
Heidi, you want to speak to your enrollment?
As you can see, ours doesn't really change much. So we're always hold pretty consistent. We currently have a pretty large 8th grade class with 155, which makes our average class size 26. We have actually some classes with 28. So this is an average, obviously. So next year when our 7th graders move up, it'll be a little bit more normalized.
Gina?
We don't have many significant changes from this year to next year either. However, we did, where is it? Healthcare and social assistance. I built in that additional, adding in that additional Project Lead the Way teacher, Mr. Busami, for a split between science and math. So hopefully decreasing our numbers more to the 15 end in our pathways to match more of our advanced manufacturing. And that's really the biggest change there as well.
So this slide is an overview of our student population. I think it really just tells a story as where we stand across the district compared to the state averages. And this is as of 23-24. They don't have this year's data posted on the state website yet. But you can see first language, not English, the district is almost 22%, where the state is at 26%. Our ELL is higher than the state average at 14.5, which is 13% at the state. You can see our low income numbers is 70.3, which is higher. Our students with disabilities, we know, is now over 26% this year, compared to 20% at the state. And then again, Webster, as you know, is a high needs community. So we are at 80% versus the 55.8. So I think that kind of tells a story, as you'll see as we go through of some of the needs. This was a slide that I liked from, it was actually a resource navigator analytics documentation. But what this does is, if you look, it compares Webster to school districts in Worcester County, school districts, and all public schools across Massachusetts. So the bold blue on the left is Webster, the gray is just Worcester County schools, and then the blue is all Webster, all public schools across the state of Massachusetts. So if you notice the trajectory on all of the lines, they're all increasing. You can see, and we are pretty much well above the average across from the state versus even Worcester County schools compared to Webster. So you'll see, and you notice ELL, even the line has gone up a little faster. We've been getting an increased population of ELL speakers coming into Webster. So part of that requirement is we have to service the students. So this kind of tells a story as to what we've been experiencing over the past few years. You'll see we're increasing across the board in L's and special ed, and our low income has kind of leveled off. It's actually come down a little bit since COVID. And Dr. McKay?
Sorry. Okay. I thought it was. Open Architect gives us up-to-date data. So it takes like 24 hours for Power School to speak to Open Architect. And then, so an example of that is based on the state data, until the state page, our school profile gets updated, we're looking like we're 14.5% ELL. We're above 16% now. So we can get that sort of more timely data on Open Architect. Another caution where our numbers might not jive is because to get the number of students who are L, they must be coded as Ls in Power School. And so if some students come in the end of September, there's a little bit of a turnaround time to screen them, to code them, to hand it into the office, for the office to enter into Power School. And so the numbers that the state captured as of October 1st, we might capture just slightly after that. We might capture Ls differently based on coding. So I just wanted to give that background. So as you can see, we've seen a jump in Ls. We currently service, I think I've explained this, we currently service students in grade 1 through 4. We don't currently have the capacity to service students in K. In fact, when I did a complete audit of the schedule at Park Avenue and of the teachers, met with them one individually with administration, and we went through like, can you be more efficient here? Can you fit this here? Can you increase the time here? So there's really no more time to be had with the number of teachers that we have. And it's not mandatory to provide service to kindergarten and preschool. Preschool especially is like students are just entering. A lot of the students that qualify are students, the likelihood of a student having a disability is high based on qualifications for preschool. Some students are nonverbal, so our participation with Ls who are nonverbal is a little bit different anyway. But in preschool and kindergarten, the expectation is that there is a language-rich classroom where kids learn language naturally when they're younger. However, we're not seeing a whole lot of growth in students making progress. And so we would like to provide service in kindergarten. And our kindergarten class this year, since October 1st, since DESE captured that number, kindergarten alone jumped by 5 kids. It's the highest jump of Ls at Park Avenue. And so we're tracking all of that to make sure that we're making, the best decisions and the best use of our time, servicing the correct number of students, the correct number of minutes. So these numbers are important. You can see the difference in since June 21 to current. So our numbers just keep growing. That's what this slide is telling us. Next slide. So this direct service of students, you can see, again, a percentage change at the bottom, the percentage change of students who are serviced, 8% change at Park Avenue, 47% change at middle school, a 23% change at Bartlett. We are seeing, I think the grade level that had the highest jump was 8th grade, that had an increase between September 30th to present, a jump of eight students who are coded as Ls. So again, you can see our numbers aren't going down, our numbers are going up. The need is continuous. The majority of the students that are coming in currently are coming from, they're they've not been in the country a long time. If they're coming from a different district, they've been in the country under 3 years, possibly. So the majority of our students are in that middle. L numbers go from 1 to 6. The majority of our students in Webster are at 3, which means they're on their way to proficiency. They're not newcomers, but they're not yet proficient in English. So there's a lot of work for us to work with that bubble.
I also think it's important to note that families can opt out of L services.
Sure.
So if they don't opt out, we are required to service them. So that would only increase our numbers, because if you look over there, we have 20 at Webster Middle School, 16 at the high school that have chosen to opt out of services. So those would be required services on that.
And as I think Ms. Peterson mentioned about access testing, so students that opt out or whose families opt them out are still required to take the access test. And so we need to be cognizant of how they do, analyze that data, schedule them, monitor. So there's twice a year monitoring, but in between, we're supposed to be talking about, like, are they making progress? Are they not making progress? Conversations at the end of the year we had at middle school, especially with families of students that had dropped out who did not make progress on access, and recaptured those students. And so it's both opt-outs and students who are former Ls, FELs, because they've reached a certain level of proficiency, still have quite a bit of work to do. Webster Middle School has the biggest bubble of students that are considered FELs and opt-out, so there's a considerable amount of monitoring that takes place during those two times.
This slide gives us an overview of our special education profile. As you can see, at the end of FY24, we had 500 students who were on IEPs. Year to date, where we stand today, we are up 34. We have 534 students who are on IEPs. I think it's important to note that if you look at on the right-hand side of the slide is our count by disability, where you see the biggest increases are in autism and in communication. And although you might not think that 18 is a large number for autism, it really is compared to looking at maybe communications where they might just need a speech service. With autism, there is the complexity of the cases and the needs of the student can be much greater. As you know, we've come to you multiple times this year looking for additional supports for some students in school with that disability. So a communication disability might not have a correlation with additional adult support, whereas autism is can be correlated to that.
Through the chair. Does this slide, are the out-of-district numbers included in this slide?
Yes. So this is another look, digging in a little bit more. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the initial referrals that were done, and those are done by school. And then you can see them rise up to the grand total at the top. So in FY24, we had 120 referrals for the year. Right now, we are at the halfway point to that. We are at 59. So we are on track to do the same as last year, and we might have more. But I want to point you to the bottom box on that. So out of all of those referrals, the majority of them are pre-K. So there's a lot of work required in pre-K to get those kids. You've heard Ms. Hare, I believe she was here talking before about preschool and how we're kind of bursting at the seams and we're running out of space in our preschool program, or we're at capacity in our preschool program. So that is something that we're definitely going to have to look at down the road and address that need because, and we'll get into that further on in the slides. But if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see our out-of-district historical placement. And this is kind of, Ms. Hare wanted to give you a view over the last 5 years of students that where the decisions, some of the big decisions are coming from. Are they move-ins or are they coming from within? So if you take a look at the orange or the top line, you can see since 2020, we've had 17 move-ins. And those students that have moved into the district who are already placed in out of district who are still with us today. So we've picked up 17 students in the past 5 years. And then if you look at the bottom row, these are district IEP team decisions. So they come in where you can see from 2020 where they've moved up. It appears that in 25 we've had 9, but 6 of those 9 actually started last year, in last school year. So they were in process already last school year. 4 of them had medical, so they were hospitalized. So there was, that's why it was in process, because it hadn't been finalized yet. So they've since come out of hospitalization, are outplaced. Some of these cases involve legal decisions. So we've been working in district, but they happen to fall in this year. So what we're seeing at the preschool level, and you can see Ms. Hare pointed that out, is definitely a lot more complex cases coming in at the preschool level. High autism, high nonverbal communication, and we're seeing medically fragile kids coming in that need additional support, where that is an impact to the overall budget. This is our preschool profile. So if you want to take a look on the left-hand side, we'll go left to right. You can see where our preschool numbers are today. We are at 77, so 47 special ed students to 30 general ed. You can see where we have been in prior years. Those were our final numbers. So you can see we've already exceeded this year where we finished the prior years. And the difficult part about that is that we, in our program, you might have a four-year-old program that runs every day, a Monday through Thursday, where you want to service kids, but we've had to get creative about splitting up those programs and maybe having kids come Tuesday and Thursday and Wednesday and Friday, and not coming the 4 days because we're required to service the kids and we can't service them all in the period of time. So now we have to break them out over shorter periods of time, so they're getting, their services are spread out, so they're not getting the 4 days where they could benefit from, because we don't have the capacity to house them, because we're limited by the space that we have and the number of enrollments. So this is something, that they've gotten creative to try and address the need to service kids when they're coming in, but it's certainly something that we need, if this continues, we're going to need to address additional program and what does that look like. We've already started the conversation. We're going to be opening up Bartlett with 3 preschool classrooms. How can we utilize those 2 classrooms to maybe have some different program there for maybe our 4-year-olds, or going into kindergarten, kindergarten readiness, or those kids who are not quite ready for kindergarten, to give them some extra time. So how do we use those classrooms? Those classrooms were intended to help with the space crunch that we're having at Park Ave. So that was the whole point of moving preschool over. But I think we're going to be in the position to to maybe continue with some preschool classes over at the elementary school where we can help kids who are moving up into kindergarten and have some additional programming.
Okay. So we talked through some of the, what makes up special education from just a general count standpoint. Thought it would be helpful to ground the committee and give some historical data around special education. So what you see here is, across 5 categories that we track our financials for special education, as well as our circuit breaker costs as well. And so we typically break it down into 4 tuition categories, and then we have other contractual services that we provide. So some of those things could be from a contractual services, when we talk about communication needs, it would be those speech services. We might contract out and have someone coming in if we need additional services and we can't do that. And then, then we'll track the tuition depending upon the type of placement that we have out of district. So what you see here is while we did have that dip during COVID, we have been trending over the last 10 years upward. We had our most significant year last year, and you can see that marked by our own internal expenses that we've had across the areas that we track, as well as circuit breaker. I just want to remind everyone that we did go out, request for extraordinary circuit breaker relief last year as a result of what we've been experiencing, but special education costs continue to rise. Actually, I think I'm going to say this later, but I'll say it now. One thing we do know, the Department of OSD has already established the special education rates for next year, and they are anticipating, they've said it, they'll go up by 3.67% next year. So rates are going up in addition to, these placements that we have. And on the next side is really a direct correlation with out-of-district placements. We are required to transport students to their out-of-district placements. We also last year went to special town meeting with an article related to transportation, so there is a direct correlation here. What we also saw in looking at those jumps is we saw a need and an increase in monitors on these routes based upon the needs of those students, as well as additional runs. So when you see that jump from 23 to 24, what you're seeing is partly what's making that up is an increase in monitors by over 100%, and then runs going up by 55%. So that direct correlation is also driving up our transportation costs. Within our special education transportation costs, we also include in that for homeless and foster transportation as well. So we're showing what portion of that overall transportation falls within that category.
Yes, please.
And because every little bit counts, we were just notified that we're eligible to apply for a $7,000 reimbursement for homeless transportation, so we'll be applying for that.
Yeah, we apply for anything and everything that we can absolutely apply for to try and offset and assist the community, because really it boils down to the community as a whole. This impacts, it's not just the school system, it impacts the whole community because we have to fund it as a community. So, yeah.
Okay, so currently, as you know, you probably are, have heard many times, from my presentations about curriculum. The Department of Education requires us to have high-quality instructional materials, and these are determined by specific standards and rubrics that they have identified for each content area. One of the things that we talked about during the summer and with our work with the SOS team from the Department of Education was the need of updating our curriculum and ensuring that all of our curriculum for main content areas was actually labeled as high-quality instructional material. So currently, this is where we are right now in terms of high-quality instructional materials. We do have ELA curriculum that has been rated per Ed Reports and curated as high-quality instructional materials. That includes the ELA curriculum for elementary, middle, and high school as well. And again, no curriculum is perfect, so we continue working with our teams, ensuring that we're not only ensuring that we're covering the curriculum, but also any other ways in which we can enhance the curriculum as well. For math curriculum, we just recently updated or implemented the new math curriculum, which is Eureka, and we also have implemented CPM, which is also qualified as high quality instructional curriculum. And then the latest, one of the latest one also as well is the science curriculum, Open Science for biology. Per the Department of Education in our instructional priority, the next two curriculum that we have to evaluate and update in the next couple of years would be the science curriculum for the elementary and middle schools, and also physics for science classes at the high school.
And then we, as a district, took a look at our counseling caseloads. As you know, we're always looking at social emotional, how we're supporting our kids in the buildings. At Park Ave, our ratio is 1 counselor to 185 students. At middle school, it is 1 to 142 students. And then we broke out the high school a little differently to make it truly reflect how we're servicing our kids at the high school. We have 2 guidance counselors. Those are career counselors. They do more with college and career readiness and support that. And then we have 2 adjustment counselors who support the social emotional needs of our students. So you'll see that averages to about 201 for each of those. The American School Counselor Association recommends a school counselor ratio of 1 to 250. And although we are definitely under that, those standards have been around for how long? 1960s. So they haven't been updated in some time, but it still is the standard running across the state. So just thought I'd give you that information.
Okay, so 2 more historical slides before we dive into the fiscal year 26 departmental request budget. So what we have here is really a historical view of our actual expenditures, with the exception of fiscal year 25, because that's our budgeted amount. So really just giving you that basis of what did we actually spend in those fiscal years, and what did that represent from an overall increase, from the prior year, or decrease in the case of fiscal year 21. So this is really just grounding information. On the next slide is our Chapter 70 historical view. So for Chapter 70, this is really how the state manages the funding for public education K through 12. It's specifically designed so that every district has the sufficient resources it needs to meet its foundation budget spending level through an equitable combination of local property taxes and state aid. So the way in which that works is the state legislature and the governor will set the total amount for Chapter 78 in their annual budget. Then there's a formula that determines how much of those total funds each school district receives. And that formula will consider the district's property values and residents' income levels. And then districts with lower property values and lower incomes receive more state aid. And so what this shows for you is the amount of aid that was designated for Webster in each of those years. You'll see in fiscal year '21, we were a little over 14 million. And last year, we were just a little over 20 million in terms of the amount of aid coming from Chapter 70. One thing I want to point out is when you look at the foundational enrollment there, it's not going to match with the actual enrollments that we showed you earlier. That really is designed, it's not intended to represent the physical number of students that you have in your building, but rather to represent the number of students that you're responsible for as residents in your town. And so we're showing you what those increases equated to. And, you know, we had this in our budget goals, but I want to point this out. We've always look to work collaboratively with the town, and where we can, share some of those funding, share some of that Chapter 70 funding. So we're just showing you that in a few cases over the last several years, we've actually shared that funding with the town and not taken the full 100% of that Chapter 70 aid. So I think with that, we can actually dive in to the preliminary budget. So what I'd like to start with as we dive in here is talking about how we went about developing this budget. The superintendent already highlighted that we started back in October, and in our budget goals, we cite the importance of involvement. And so we leaned on our leadership team across the district. And that means not just the leadership team that shows up here, it's our instructional leadership team, leaders in every one of our areas we reach out to make sure that everyone has a voice and input into the needs across the budget. And so with all of that information, we pull that together. And what we'll be presenting tonight is that departmental request budget. But before we get there, think of the approach that we took, which is doing this in steps and/or layers. So what this is showing for you is that in that first step, if we just look at salaries, right, the increases that were obligated related to salaries and our special education tuition, that results in and of itself of a 5.56% increase. As we move on to the next step and we layer on some additional fixed and contractual obligations, that increases the budget by 0.74 to 6.30. What we're going to present and what I'll unpack in more detail as we get into other slides is the departmental request budget, right? So why don't we move into the next one and then I can dive into that. So what we're presenting and what we want to talk about in more detail is a budget. It's a $29 million budget, a little over that, which represents an increase of 8.41%. Want to highlight some key and high-level increase drivers that compose that increase, and then we're going to unpack that in more detail. So in this budget, it includes 5 new positions. Pausing here because I thought that used to say 4.75 FTEs and now it says 5.
I know.
So I just had to take a pause and think that through. We have some curriculum updates that are planned in this budget, and we're going to get into that in more detail. It factors in all the step and lane changes that we're obligated to make. Another portion of that is as employees turn over and we hire, that fluctuates our budget as well, right? We don't always hire people at the same salary level. They might be more experienced coming into the district. As we mentioned earlier in the updates, we will be negotiating every contract in the district. So we did plan for contingency funding for that as well. We have a variety of compliance mandates that we are required to meet. You will notice once we get to talking about those compliance mandates, as we were going through this presentation, there's a little indicator on every slide for those things that are considered compliance. So if you happen to look back at that, those are our compliance indicators. Our special education tuition, as well as fixed and contractual obligations that we have. And we're going to get into more detail. So let's dive into the next one and unpack. And what we're going to do as we go through this one is unpack them at every level, right? So you understand the layers of this budget request and what it's made of.
Yep. So if we look at option 1, which was our first draft, or first layer, we need to take into account the new sped positions that were approved in this year's budget in FY25. Many of those positions were brought forward. They were paid this year out of the grant because we had some additional funds left over in FY24. Those funds will not be there next year, so we're going to have to absorb them, like we said, into our local budget as we move forward into next year. Positions totaling 8 positions of ABAs, 1 IA, and 1 nurse assistant that was approved this year. We also have added in a .5 nurse, a new position to provide additional coverage for Webster Middle School and Bartlett High School. As Ms. Conto said, we have some staff departures and new hires, as we always try to fill positions within the budget that we have. When a staff member leaves, we don't always have that ability to do so. Some of the positions are more difficult to fill than others. And so, we need to pay staff accordingly to their level when they're coming in. We also included in step and lane changes, and we have a contingency for collective bargaining as we are entering negotiation this year, and our non-union salary increases. So then after we did that, we went into budget 2.
So in budget, in the second layer is really looking at those things that we have some contractual obligations with, as well as utilities. So took a hard look across the district at utility costs. And in some areas, we have been historically underfunding some of those utilities. So like water and sewer is a good example of that. So we really needed to make sure that we were funding that from a budgeting standpoint at the right level. Copier and lease rentals, those supply costs, we do copy a lot of things, and we use worksheets and things that are necessary. And so we looked at that funding as well. We took a look at all of the software that we're using across the district, took a look at what those costs are, been looking at licensing. And certainly as we went through this exercise, it really required us to reflect on every one of those things and what are we licensed for? Is it the right licensing model? Making sure that we were taking a hard look at that. And another example is, we pay for physician services through UMass, right, to support the health and well-being of our student population, and those costs continue to rise as well. So that's what that additional layer was in that second step.
And then we approached the third step and took a look at our department budgets and what are we working towards this year. So it includes all of the above plus 7 positions, 1 L teacher, which is a .5, 1 bright academic coordinator, but we only need to fund .25 because the .75 is grant funded already in that position. We are looking at adding a world language teacher at Webster Middle School. We included right now 3 long-term subs across the district. As you know, we did not include them this year. We've talked multiple times about the benefit of them and, what's the benefit of having them? What's the benefit of not having them? How does it work? At least the difficulty in finding and getting subs to come in on a daily basis is very hard, and we don't have a sub pool. The benefit of offering a long-term sub is that they would qualify for health insurance, so maybe they are not, in the teachers union or something like that, but it's an added benefit to somebody coming in who's looking to work, to come on board. And then you're consistent with that one body every day. Somebody's going to be there. We also are looking at another nurse assistant. And then we are looking at our curriculum updates and renewals, looking at new science curriculum for Webster Middle School. And then we are renewing our Wonders program for 2020 and looking at translation services. Ms. Rivera is here to talk about our curriculum review for the new science program.
You. So right now, this is just basically a nice visual, to look at the process that we go through in order to review our current curriculum and also determine if we need to update the curriculum or renew, depending on the process and the outcomes of the process, and also based on data and reports for each one of the curriculums. So we're currently, right now, in the process of implementing and monitoring two curriculums right now, as I mentioned earlier, the math and also the biology open sci-ed, and that's going to continue for the rest of this year and next year as well, or FY26 as well. And then we are, the plan is to start the process of curriculum review for the middle school during this academic year, and basically start the process of selecting to pilot one of the curriculums towards the end of the spring semester before, and then obviously making a decision at that point. So the implemented and monitoring would be for the following year. And I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything else. I don't want to repeat the same thing again, but
That's clear. Thank you.
So that gets us into our compliance requirements. So if you look at the little symbol again at the top, you'll notice at the bottom, we, in the corner of the slides, as you review, if you're wondering what's in those compliance updates, just look for that little symbol. But again, special education is a big one. Tuition and related services, inclusive of transportation, that are required by the IEP, is a compliance requirement, and that is an impact on our budget. The 9 new positions approved during FY25 to satisfy the IEP requirements, those were grant funded for the first year and now absorbed into our local budget. There are two nurse assistants to satisfy IEPs, both currently being serviced via contracted service. So one of them, I believe, was approved this year. And we have another one that's in the works that was scheduled to come to you this year also. It hasn't come before you yet. We have another medically fragile child who needs nursing that we're required to provide a nurse. So that is also in here. It won't be a new position next year, but it's an impact to next year's budget. So we were kind of how to show you those positions where there impacts this year, but it's also driving the cost of next year. And then looking at our transportation budget in district and out of district. Another compliance is looking at HQIM. As you know, the state is strongly recommending that all of our core subjects are HQIM. We are very close. We've done a great job, I think, as a district at supporting that and implementing that over the years. So we are close to that. Our final program would be science at Park Ave and middle school. Right now, we're just talking about middle school for next year. We're not looking at Park Ave. And then we're looking at a 0.5 teacher to support our servicing needs at the elementary school. These all fall into compliance.
And when we look at this departmental request budget, just kind of give you a breakdown of what's composed in there, what makes that up. 4 high-level categories to kind of note. So salaries are 81.53% of this budget, right? So fair to say that the majority, of course, is falling into salaries. Special education represents 32.59%, so close to 33%. And of that 33%, when we look overall in the budget, out of district tuition is a little over 9%. Then the next notable one after that is maintenance. across the buildings. So I think it's important to understand what's in this budget. The way in which we service students is through our staff. That's our major investment that we have across the district. And that is the portion share of our budget.
So as you know, we do receive circuit breaker funding from the state to help offset some of our costs for special education students. Circuit breaker pays the districts 75% of the cost over the foundation or the base cost, and that base cost is at 52,000 this year, close to 52.5, I think. So anything over that initial 52.5, we are reimbursed by the state at 75% of that cost, and that goes to students who are in district and out of district. So we go through a process, a claim process every year, where we take a look at all of our students. We provide a breakdown of the services that they're receiving, and it comes to show us how much circuit breaker money we can get back. So if you look at it, at the first column in the budgeted 2025, that's what we budgeted for this year. So that's when we were planning our budget for this year, those were our estimates. That's what we had on the books at the time. If you look at our actual to date column to the right of that, that is what our expenses are as of today or coming into this meeting tonight. Our tuitions were at 4.1 million, so they increased to 3.7. Our local funds, the budget amount hadn't changed because we have our approved budget, so we have 2.6 million. We carried over 928,000 because you're allowed to carry over 1 year of circuit breaker. That is always our goal, is to carry over the year. So we carried a full amount over from FY24, which was the 928,000. Then we initially anticipated getting 1.1 million in circuit breaker funds when we were creating this budget. But then our tuitions went up drastically. We applied for extraordinary relief. We reevaluated in our final submittal and approved circuit breaker for this year jumped to 1.6 million. So that speaks to how high our tuitions had gone up from the initial point at the beginning of the year. So what we do is we add up our revenue, which is the LEA and the 2 circuit breaker to get a total, and we subtract out what the tuitions are. So that'll leave us a balance of 1.095. So, as I said, we like to roll over a year's worth of circuit breaker. Our year's worth of circuit breaker this year would have been 1.6. Estimating right now, we're not going to be able to carry that full over. We're only going to be able to carry over 1 million of that. Now, if, like what happened last year, if we continue to watch our costs, if they continue, if it applies, we'll apply for extraordinary relief again and see what we can do if we hit that benchmark. But there are no guarantees in that. So then as we went for our budget for FY26, we took a look at all the students that we had placed in district in our tuition. We have 3 students in there that are not currently outplaced, but are likely to be outplaced. They were 95% sure they were going to be outplaced. We don't pad this number. It's not like we put a number in and hope that it doesn't come. These are students that are actively placed and that are guaranteed to be placed out. So we were at 4.4. We are budgeting, we looked at our numbers, we budgeted 2.6 million in this budget. We're using the circuit breaker because we're required to use all of the FY25 circuit breaker. We level funded the circuit breaker for FY26 at what our FY25 number was, which will leave us 995,000 to carry over into FY '27 if we need that number in FY '27. Are there any questions about circuit breaker? Okay. And then our next slide is our school choice. As you know, we have students coming in and coming out of district during the year who's school choice. We definitely have more students who are school choicing out than we have school choicing in. So as you can see, the funding that we have received over the years has decreased. This is not a source that is guaranteed or that we expect to be around for a while to come. If you take a look, this was our balance at the start of FY '25. We had budgeted to use 200,000. This is a fund that if for some reason we do have any remaining funds at the end of the year, we try not to use the school choice if we don't have to. But this money, because this money was set to offset our technology, and that's how we originally decided, the school committee decided to use the circuit breaker funds. As we went to a one-to-one initiative every year, we've been investing some of that money for tuition. And then it also helped offset a little bit of our ABA. So we have budgeted for this year 200,000, so that would reduce the balance to 588. We continue with the 200,000 for FY '26. So that would reduce our number to 388. We typically only average taking anywhere from 50 to 85,000. So as you can see, this model is not a sustainable model using these funds moving forward.
So that really set the stage in going over those two funding sources to give you a breakdown of what composes this budget from funding source standpoint. 89% is coming from what we'll call local funds or our LEA budget. School choice represents a very small portion, only 1% of the overall budget, while circuit breaker and grants combined, represent 10% of our budget composition.
So next steps, we know the governor usually releases their state budget on the fourth Wednesday of the month. That is January 22nd. Once that happens, we usually the next day get our Chapter 70 numbers. The foundation budgets are released. Again, our foundation budgets are based off our October 1 enrollment. As you know, we were seeing big increases for 2 years up until last year. It was reduced, and that was where that inflation factor came into play. We don't know what that's going to be, but that is a big driving point behind our budget. I'm not expecting huge increases. Although we had 9 kids, I think 9 or 10 kid increase in our enrollment. I was hoping for more than that. They came in, it missed the October 1 cutoff. They came in right after. But that inflation factor plays a big part in the formula, in the percentages that we see.
And if I can just mention, last year, that inflation factor was only 1.4%.
Down
So it's
4.35.
Yeah, and so when you see rising costs, just like if you look at the rate that the special education tuition was at, that's a big gap.
Yeah. And then, as you know, the Student Opportunity Act they were phasing in the new formula over a 6-year. They are in year 5 of 6 for that. So there's already talks about how can we reach out and look at our formula and reevaluate again to meet the needs of our students, because as you can see, it's just not keeping up with the needs that are coming in and that we're dealing with at the school level. And then for us, next steps is working with our town, looking at revenue projections. They're setting the health insurance rates. They'll be looking at that. I know they're starting to work on that. So there's going to be lots happening. But I think you can see by our budget, we should have put a slide in with the final number. I'll go back to where we were looking at. there is not a lot in here that we are asking for new that isn't already in. Most of what we're asking for is compliance. We have the 3 long-term subs, we have the world language, and we are looking, actually, we didn't mention the behavioral coach position. It's budget neutral position, so there's no increase to the budget, it's just a shift. So we're looking for an 8.41%. That's our initial draft at a 2.2. So I don't know if the school committee has any questions for us or would like to give us their thoughts and directions on how you would like us to proceed. In your packets, you actually have the budget book also in your packets. So please look through that. We look at it 100 times. We review it. But it's always good to have a fresh set of eyes and somebody else to look at it and say, you know, maybe this is a mistake, or I don't understand this, take a look at that and give us your feedback on that. But I don't know if you have any.
If I could just say one final thing relative to this, going back to our budget goals, and that is the importance that we feel of bringing forward what our team thinks they need, right? And I think that's the most important thing we can do, and we have an obligation to bring that forward. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think we also recognize that economic times are hard, right? And, you know, but we would be remiss if we didn't come forward with what we thought we needed. We know we're probably going to have to sharpen our pencils somewhere, and we've had some of those conversations, but what you're seeing tonight is what our team has come up with in terms of real needs across the district. Just wanted to add that.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Through the chair. I know this was a long process, so every year, I mean, you guys just put so much time and energy and effort into this. I really like this layout, going through it and going layer by layer. It was extremely helpful to just unpack everything and, you know, where it comes from versus looking at the worksheet for somebody that's not good with numbers. So I just wanted to call that out, and hopefully that can continue. So thank you.
I agree. This was a nice layout. I have every confidence that you know, we're making a budget in good faith that is nothing more than what we really need. And I know that over the years, we have consistently been really thoughtful about what we need and what we may be able to do without if we must. I know that, you know, Kate Birdie was here earlier talking about Project Lead the Way, and I think in some ways we're really fortunate to be able to have such rich technological curriculum and that type of thing available to students. But I know that we run lean every day in the buildings, whether it's not having subs or, you know, running out of paras to cover a classroom and that kind of thing. So I know that there's not a lot in here with regard to adding positions. Those building subs were something that I really hated to see go last year, but needed to go. I'm glad to see them back on the first draft. And I just want to compliment the whole team on being really thoughtful about what you brought to the table here and presenting it in a way that was really easy for us to understand.
Is there any suggestions or anything you would like us to bring back to you for next school committee meeting or the meeting after?
I didn't write anything down that I felt was missing. I'll reflect more.
Okay.
I was just going to piggyback on that. Same thing. I mean, it's really, you know, it's lean, it's thoughtful. We need all of the things that are in the budget. So again, I will take another thought around it and come back to you if there's anything additional.
Any other comments, questions from the committee?
We've shocked you into quiet, right?
I think it was the turning off of the lights that got us quiet. Get your sunglasses. So if there's nothing further with regard to the budget, the next item on the agenda under new business is the custodian's request for intent to bargain. So we are in receipt of a letter from the custodians union requesting to bargain. Anything you wanted to add to that, Mrs. Perangeli?
We would be looking for a school committee representative to serve on the bargaining committee.
Okay. I will entertain a nomination for a school committee representative to serve on the bargaining committee.
Through the chair,
Mr.
I
Adamopoulos?
would nominate Member Blythe on that.
Mr. Adamopoulos nominated Member Blythe, and I hear a second from Member Scariglia. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
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 Yes, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the WEA request for intent to bargain. So we're in receipt of a letter from the Webster Educators Association to bargain their contract as well.
And again, we would be looking for a school committee representative to serve on that bargaining committee.
Through the chair.
Member Blythe?
I would like to recommend that we nominate Nick Adamopoulos for that.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you to Member Blythe and Member Adamopoulos for stepping up to manage these negotiations. The next item on the agenda is the acceptance of donations, and there's a lot of them, but I'm going to go through each of them line by line because I really think that the donors deserve, just that moment of us being sure that we acknowledge each and every expression of generosity that we received over this season. So the first item is miscellaneous office supply items that were donated by Mandy Jaraminski to the Webster Middle School. Then we have some Walmart gift cards that were donated by the staff at Bartlett High School, and those went to 8 families. Gifts donated by CrossFit Clean Slate to families at Bartlett High School. $500 for PBIS that was donated by the Dowd family to the Webster Middle School. Miscellaneous Christmas gifts from the Novak family and the Novak Plumbing Company. And miscellaneous Christmas gifts from Mafre Insurance. Mrs. Perangeli?
I would just like to thank everybody who made donations around the holidays or whenever they donate to our school system. The generosity is incredible. I was here on a Saturday morning and overwhelmed by the generosity that I see from families who come forward to donate and give back to our community. It was amazing, and I can't thank everyone enough who contribute and who do it, and maybe just not even here, but staff across the schools who are just so generous to do what they can for our families that are not on this list. It goes beyond this. So I just want to thank everybody for their support, for their generosity, for their kindness, and everything that they do for our families every day. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Perangeli. I couldn't have said it better myself. With that being said, I will entertain a motion to accept all of the donations or outlined.
So moved.
We're very excited about accepting these donations. We have a motion and 2 seconds. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
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 Yes, motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the review, transfer, signing of warrants, bills, payroll, and vouchers. And we do have a transfer request. It's in the amount of $25,992.30. And that's going to be moving from the Bartlett High School Student Activity Savings Account to the checking account. I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Desiree, would you please poll the committee?
Yes.
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 Yes, meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone.